Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with many of Australia's most influential personalities on issues of business and economic development taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with our magazines, videos and podcasts by visiting www.theabe.tv and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Mark Hughes. Mark is the Infrastructure Regional Director, leading the development of the rail and transit and environment and geoscience business in Australasia. He has 25 years of experience and awareness of industry issues throughout the rail and wider transport environment, with an excellent knowledge of rail business and operations, and has led the expansion of rail and transit's product offering within the UK market. Mark has held frontline operations, train crew and performance management roles, and as a consultant has supported numerous franchise bids in the areas of operations and service delivery plan. He was the overall bid director for MTR's successful Crossrail Bid in London to operate trains and deliver world-class customer service across the capital, worth 2.5 billion Australian. Since arriving in Australia in 2014, having been tasked with developing a new strategic advisory capability within the Australian business, Mark was shortly afterwards promoted to the position of Regional Director, where he has continued to build the wider infrastructure business, expanding services into rail control systems through live engineering and program management service offerings. In 2016, Mark was additionally asked to oversee the ENG team and also the joint venture project in Malaysia, where SNC-Lavalin have been supporting the implementation of a new rail system into KL. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
No, you're welcome.
My first question is, your role has been recently expanded. Can you tell us what this means in terms of your remit and responsibilities?
Oh, yeah, certainly, yes. The country leadership role is an overlay of my current sector role, which is to manage our infrastructure interests here in Australasia, particularly, as you've said, the rail and the environment and geoscience markets. I'm obviously delighted to have been given the opportunity to be able to broaden both my knowledge and the relationships within our business. So that's very exciting personally and hopefully very rewarding too. It is a role that's existed already, so I'm actually replacing somebody who's moving on and upwards within our business, which is great for them. But the intent of the role is to ensure that we have got a strong one SNC-Lavalin across all of our business sectors, and that our individual business sectors support each other in a way that we all achieve better results for our clients. The business sector coordination aspect of the role is a particular key element. We've got key clients, some of them are joint clients between our various sectors, and we are intent on ensuring we're proactive in the long-term development of those professional relationships. Equally, sharing resources and skills between the sectors is very important, and as each sector goes through different phases of its sort of current market opportunities, this is quite a critical element of our sort of efficiency and effectiveness. So I suppose ultimately I'm there to lead and develop the strategic plan for our Australia business, working closely with the regional lead and our president of our power sector, who has an overall Asia perspective. So yeah, no, very exciting to be doing that. The vision ultimately is that not only are we recognised globally in our industry, but all four of our sectors are brand prominent in the Australian marketplace.
SNC-Lavalin is a Canadian company that you report into, but you're an Englishman who now leads the team in Australia. What are your perceptions of doing business in these different markets?
Well, being a POM abroad has always got its easy pot shots, and I'm no different, I suppose. And not speaking any other languages very well apart from English, I suppose working in Australia, UK, and with Canadians makes it relatively easy for me. But yeah, no, there are very strong cultural links between the three Commonwealth countries. But there's also, for us, a significant international sort of expat contribution in those markets as well. So, to be honest, moving into Australia from the UK certainly wasn't a personal challenge. I mean, SNC-Lavalin, although it's a Canadian business, is an international company. So, we're operating all over Asia, Europe, South America, and Africa. And although I only speak one language, we've got nearly 60 languages, I think, are spoken in SNC-Lavalin throughout. So, although my language limitations are there, the whole business is pretty diverse. But back to the question of sort of markets between Canada, UK, and Australia. I mean, they have similarities. You could describe generally as being mature markets, I suppose. They're strong financially, large historical infrastructure investors. They're markets with good legal and safety regulation. And although there are sort of political nuances, we all have those. So I think fundamentally it's quite, it feels quite comfortable moving into this particular marketplace. The real issue is that you need to find your feet in terms of new relationships and understand not only that there's a national market here, but there are markets within markets because of the state basis of the Australian political system. I think the other thing that I should just touch on is in terms of perceptions in doing business here. There's you need to have a very strong client focus, whichever market you're in. Having that international pedigree helps us. But at the end of the day, we're all, whether it's in the UK, Canada, or Australia, in a hot infrastructure transport market, we're all very much competing for a shortage of skills and talent management and talent development is absolutely key. And one of the things that we're very keen on is ensuring that we recognise the need for a diverse workforce. So, in Australia as elsewhere, that drive for diversity in our business that improves our innovation and our productivity is essential, and it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of improving the attractiveness of your business as a recruiter. So that's something which, again, I think is similar and a similar challenge in those other markets, but something we're very passionate about here in Australia.
Well, SNC-Lavalin has recently been awarded the contract as the lead company in the consortium to design the rail element of the Western Sydney Airport. Can you take us through the project?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. But first of all, it was a very exciting opportunity and a fantastic prospect, long awaited by the population of Sydney, and to be honest, it will become a bit of a national asset, an essential asset for transport within Australia and beyond. So to have been awarded the contract and the opportunity to work with the Commonwealth Government as well as with the Transport for New South Wales was a real exciting outcome for us, and we're right amongst it at the moment. So Western Sydney Airport is the brand new second major airport for Sydney, which will be used for international and domestic travel. It's situated in a place called Badgerys Creek, and it'll be serving the sort of future growth for Western Sydney area, which is obviously planned for significant growth in Parramatta and beyond. The full capacity of the airport will be somewhere around 80 million passengers a year, and there'll be a business park in the development plan as well. But to move this amount of people means that the site is going to have probably 2 rail lines, and both will be capable of 24 trains an hour. So yeah, in December we were contracted by the Department of Infrastructure and Regional Development to undertake what's a feasibility design on the 2 lines, and the scope is quite clear. It's asking 3 basic questions, which we're currently responding to. Those questions are basically, can the railway and its associated systems and stations be designed, constructed and safely operated within the land given within the overall scheme? How will the railway be constructed over time as an integrated element of an evolving site? Because, for example, the airport won't necessarily be built all in one go. And dependent on the timing and design option chosen, how much will the elements of the site actually cost? And the provision of these answers will allow the department to determine how and when the railway elements of the airport are procured. It's not our job to conclude on a single option, but to give them a number of options. And the scope of work combined basically gives us the opportunity to demonstrate a full range of rail systems and civils and commercial aspects. To do that effectively, we have the leadership and accountability for all the deliverables, but we are working with others, for example, SMEC, civil design, and Architectus for station architecture, and a company called Aquenta for the commercial aspects. And so really we're bringing a number of organisations together to deliver this what will be hopefully an excellent report for the client. The bid itself was a very positive experience. I think I've said previously that we are very keen to ensure that we are seen as an excellent collaborator in the market, doing the right things with the right people. And it brought the best out of all of us, I think. Very tight timescales to respond, bringing a consortium together, putting a bid together, putting the people together, and presenting to the client. So the outcome was a fantastic one in the process itself, and the project is due to be finished at the end of May.
Some organisations tend to operate their business units as silos that have little to no connection with each other. But in the case of SNC-Lavalin, these divisions seem to have a lot of natural crossover. Are they considered independent of one another, or do they tend to work in unison?
Well, there's no denying that we have four sectors. So we have our oil and gas sector, we have our infrastructure sector, which I'm the leader of here in Australia, we have the power sector, and we have the mining and metals sector. And each of those has a president that reports to the CEO, and you wouldn't be surprised to know that they've obviously got KPIs for their individual sector. But thinking about the operation as a overall business entity, there's somewhat of a history question, I think. SNC-Lavalin over time has expanded, certainly in its recent 20 years or so, rapidly through acquisition as well as organic growth. And to some extent, those acquisitions were operated more in isolation than perhaps in unison. But over the last 5 years, and even more so since 2015, when our new CEO, Neil Bruce, took over, took charge of the business, there's been much more emphasis and strategic focus on one brand identity, the one company and one vision. And as such, our individual sector presidents are measured, yes, on their own sector performance, but also on their cross-sector support, whether it be identifying opportunities or providing resources into other sectors. Really, it's now much more about a one-team approach to doing business. We've got, as I say, the four business sectors, but they've got some pretty simple strategic objectives, being more operationally effective and efficient, being much more client-centric in everything that we do, and that's I think a key one. Creating a much more performance-driven culture, and also growing both organically and through acquisition where those acquisitions are right, synergistic and complementary.
Is this effectively the one company approach that the organisation takes to all of its projects?
Well, in projects, I mean, absolutely, one company approach is what we want in our business. Whether established sectors or recent acquisitions, of which Interfleet, my former company before it became SNC, and Kent's again, and part of the oil and gas industry that SNC acquired, they're kind of testament really to having the same values and understanding of the business direction is key. We spend a lot of time developing and improving how we bring our staff into the business. So that's not just ensuring that everyone understands how our business systems work, but to ensure that staff have time to meet the senior managers in the business. We do a lot of road shows, present to staff on a quarterly basis, give people the information that they need to understand the business direction. So this kind of one company approach is a cultural goal as well as an alignment of our core values. There'll always be differences in the way that different sectors perform some of their projects, despite there being similarities in engineering problems. But however, the differences often can be driven by the way a sector does things, specific client requirements, etc. You could have the need to manage a project with a certain type of software that's different for one client to another, but the principles and the disciplines are precisely the same.
Power and infrastructure are growing markets for the organisation. Where do you see these opportunities being present?
Well, certainly, I mean, taking power and infrastructure in the Australian marketplace, that is true, and probably true for Asia as well. I mean, I know much more detail in terms of our infrastructure business. The Australian market at the moment is significantly active. I think the Minister for Infrastructure here in New South Wales recently described it as a boom town. I think that can be used in other cities around the world as well. But certainly New South Wales and Victoria, but also Queensland to a lesser extent, in the public sector transport space, have an awful lot of either active building work or planning to do work in the future. That's not just railways, it's road as well. There's a lot of new work going on in both modes of transport, and certainly that's very helpful for our environment and geoscience team too. Because basically population growth, urbanisation equals metronisation. Old rail systems creak at the seams because they can't cope with the capacity and the volume of people coming through the train, rail and road system. And as a result of that, either building new assets like Sydney Metro, Parramatta Light Rail, CBD Light Rail, those assets free up space as well as new trains, which we're heavily involved in all of those types of projects. But if you go beyond, for infrastructure, you go beyond Australia, New Zealand is a bit quieter. It's got a metro city loop it would like to have, and also a light rail. And then beyond there into the Asia Pacific region, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of future activity and current activity. Again, in the public transport space, urbanisation is driving huge amounts of investment into new metros, both in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia. There's a planned high-speed line between KL and Singapore. So these are tens of billions of dollars that are being spent around major cities in the Asia marketplace, and the next probably 10 to 20 years looks pretty bright overall in terms of infrastructure investment. There's a lot of opportunity within the power business too. At the moment, our power business in Australia is relatively new. We're in the early phase of developing our business here and responding to the fact that although there's sometimes quite a lot of newspaper coverage of renewable energy versus more traditional energy sources, I think renewable energy is a sensible strategy for the Australian marketplace. But SNC-Lavalin is a world export in the power market generally. So whether it's renewables and hydro, or whether it's sort of nuclear or sort of thermal power, the business itself has a tremendous amount of competence.
Well, my final question for you today is, you've described the Australian infrastructure market as mature. What does that mean to the organisation?
Well, I think it makes it a challenge. I think it's mature for a variety of reasons that I've probably touched on a little bit earlier. But because it is with relatively well-established international and national organisations in the marketplace that have been here for many years, new entrants or entrants trying to do new things have to find new ways of doing those things. So differentiation, I suppose, is what it means in the marketplace. It means that we need to be different through either some form of uniqueness, quality of work, the way that we deal with our clients, so back to the client-centricness nature of things. Certainly, I don't like the idea that you can compete purely on a price basis. So finding the right blend to be different is important. And Interfleet Technology is the company that was acquired by SNC-Lavalin back in 2011, and we would have been in existence in this market for 20 years in 2017. So we've got a great strength in a technical consulting reputation, but SNC-Lavalin globally can offer much more than consulting capability in the infrastructure space. And so over time, SNC-Lavalin will develop and need to develop the right blend of local and global capability that it deploys here in Australia. That doesn't happen overnight, but the program leadership roles, such as the Western Sydney Airport, for example, and other roles, shadow operator roles on Sydney Metro is another good example, starts to demonstrate the kind of capability that SNC can bring to bear in the Australian market. And the sort of bigger programs that we can be capable of supporting our clients. One thing we will need to be mindful of as we expand our presence is how fast the future is going to change. So all markets could be described, or many markets could be described as mature, but within those mature markets, big change is happening. And understanding, for example, how to deal with data, big data and data connectedness, for example, is a real opportunity as well as a challenge. And I think in that regard, we're all more on a level playing field and trying to work out how to respond best to changing technologies in our industries.
Well, thank you, Mark. That's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive and our magazines, videos and podcasts by visiting www.theabe.tv and clicking on subscribe.